Imagine a secret so deeply buried that it defies centuries of indoctrination. A secret that, if true, exposes an anomaly so shocking that it would shake the foundations of the history of the Catholic Church. You are about to discover the controversial theory that a woman secretly held the highest position in Christendom. This is Unholy Secrets, the channel where we unravel the darkest mysteries of the Church. Here we give voice to the inexplicable and take a close look at the secrets that the Vatican may prefer to leave forgotten. Prepare yourself to dive into a story surrounded by conspiracy, scandal, and silence. The legend of Pope Joan is one of the greatest enigmas in the history of Christianity. Supposedly occurring in the 9th century, this theory suggests that a woman, in disguise, rose to the papacy, deceiving everyone around her. But how did such an extraordinary story reach us? Was it merely an invention or a carefully erased episode by the Church? Today, we will dissect each layer of this theory, exploring not only the accounts that support it, but also the evidence, or lack thereof, that makes the mystery even more intriguing. And before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps us continue revealing the secrets that many prefer to keep hidden. The legend of Pope Joan begins in a historical context of great instability and transformation in the European landscape. We are in the 9th century, a period of barbarian invasions, the decline of the central authority of the Carolingian Empire, and the strengthening of the Church as a dominant political and spiritual force. In this turbulent world, the role of women was rigidly confined to the domestic and religious spheres, always under male control. Joan, according to the legend, was born in Mainz, present-day Germany, or in the region of England, depending on the version. From a very young age, she showed exceptional intelligence, something that set her apart in a time when access to education was denied to most women. Her desire for knowledge led her to seek ways to study in secret. Some accounts claim that it was her love for a monk that encouraged her to disguise herself as a man and join a monastery. This monk is said to have shared with her a love for theology, philosophy, and classical texts. The need to hide her true identity was not just a matter of survival, but also a way to challenge the social norms of the time. Over the years, her dedication and skills made her a prominent figure. Joan is said to have gained the trust of her fellow monks, who believed they were in the presence of a devoted and intellectually superior man. From there, she began her rise within the ecclesiastical hierarchy, moving strategically through the circles of clerical power. But what allowed Joan to maintain her disguise for so long? Some speculate that her physical appearance helped. She may have had more androgynous features, which made it difficult to identify her true gender. Additionally, the strict discipline she imposed on herself, avoiding any situation that might expose her secret, reinforced her credibility. The story of Pope John VIII is surrounded by uncertainties and contradictions. Martin of Opava, the first chronicler to record the legend, wrote his account nearly 400 years after the supposed events. This raises a crucial question. How could such an extraordinary story survive through the centuries without more contemporary records? Some historians argue that Martin based his narrative on popular rumors circulating at the time. Others suggest that he may have incorporated fictional elements to criticize the corruption and moral decay of the papacy. It's important to remember that the 13th century, when Martin lived, was a period of great tension between the clergy and reformist movements. On the other hand, proponents of the theory point to oral tradition as a possible source. Before the invention of the printing press, much of history was transmitted through spoken accounts, which could explain the lack of official documents. However, this same characteristic makes the legend vulnerable to alterations, exaggerations, and distortions. Another intriguing point is the omission of Pope John VIII from some papal lists. While certain records mention her name, others simply ignore it. This could be interpreted as a deliberate attempt to erase her existence. However, it could also be attributed to errors or inconsistencies common in medieval records. The sedia stercoraria, a chair with a perforated seat, is often cited as indirect evidence of the existence of Pope Joan. While its function is widely debated, some believe it was used to verify the gender of popes before their official consecration. The existence of this chair is confirmed by historical records and even preserved examples in museums. However, critics of the theory argue that its use could have been purely symbolic, representing the humility or vulnerability of the Pope, rather than a tool to detect fraud. Another curious aspect is the tradition of avoiding the Rua dos Santos Quatro during papal processions. It is said that it was here that Joan gave birth, revealing her true identity. While this practice may have entirely different origins, it fuels the theory that the Church tried to cover up the scandal. Even more intriguing are the medieval artistic representations showing a female papal figure. In some of them, the figure is accompanied by a child, which could be an allusion to Joan's supposed childbirth. While these works may have been merely symbolic or satirical, they add more layers to the mystery. To understand the depth of the Pope Joan legend, it is crucial to reflect on the role reserved for women in the Church and medieval society. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church was one of the main cultural and political pillars of the West. While its discourse exalted female figures, such as the Virgin Mary, its power structure was rigidly patriarchal. Women did, in fact, have a significant role in female monasteries. Abbesses often managed vast territories and had spiritual authority over their convents. Some, like Hildegard of Bingen, gained fame as visionaries and intellectuals, but even these extraordinary women operated within rigid limits. The idea of a woman achieving the papacy, the highest position in the Church, was unacceptable to the dominant mindset. The legend of Joan may have been inspired by stories of women who challenged these barriers. There are records of women who disguised themselves as men to study or join clerical institutions, such as the story of Hildegard of Schonau, a young woman who lived as a monk for years. These cases, though rare, show that some women dared to break the norms. On the other hand, the legend of Joan may have also emerged as a satire, perhaps created by papacy opponents. During the medieval period, the papacy faced constant criticism from reformers and political enemies. Creating the figure of a female pope could have been a way to discredit the institution, turning it into a laughingstock. The use of Joan's figure as a symbolic critique cannot be dismissed either. Her story could have been a metaphor for the perceived fragility of the papacy during a time of crisis. Thus, Pope Joan becomes both a symbol of resistance and a weapon of attack. Furthermore, it is possible that the legend served to reinforce the exclusion of women from the Church's hierarchy. The narrative that a disguised woman caused an unprecedented scandal could have been used to justify the strict gender segregation within the clergy. In this case, the legend would not just be a story of transgression, but also of repression. The 9th century was a period of intense challenges for both the papacy and Europe as a whole. The transition between the Carolingian period and the fragmentation of feudal power created a chaotic scenario. The Carolingian Empire, which had been one of the main defenders of the papacy, was disintegrating due to internal disputes and external invasions, such as those by the Vikings and Magyars. Within this context, the papacy struggled to maintain its authority. The Church was frequently involved in political disputes, and the figure of the Pope was often manipulated by kings and nobles. This situation created an atmosphere of instability, where the rise of a figure like Joan, disguised as a man, could have been more plausible. Moreover, the period was marked by a notable scarcity of reliable historical records. Many documents were lost due to raids and destruction, while others were deliberately altered to serve political interests. This means that, even if Joan's story were true, it is likely that it was suppressed or distorted. The cultural environment also played a crucial role. 9th century Europe was deeply influenced by symbolism and oral tradition. Legends and stories were used not only for entertainment, but also as tools for teaching and propaganda. In this context, the legend of Pope Joan could have been created or adapted to convey specific messages, either criticizing the papacy or warning against women who defied the norms. Another interesting aspect is the relationship between the papacy and reform movements. During the 9th century, religious movements sought to reform the church, denouncing practices such as simony and nepotism. The legend of Joan could have been a response to these criticisms, creating a symbolic figure to highlight the dangers of corruption and moral decay. Even centuries after the emergence of the legend, the story of Pope Joan continues to provoke heated debates and deep reflections. In the contemporary world, where gender equality and inclusion are at the heart of social discussions, Joan's story resurfaces as a powerful symbol. For many, Pope Joan represents the possibility of transgression and resistance in a rigidly hierarchical system. Her figure challenges the official narrative of a solely male church, suggesting that, at some point, a woman was able to penetrate the heart of clerical power. Although this possibility is controversial, it serves as a reminder of the many forms of exclusion that persist today. The legend also raises questions about transparency and the preservation of history. If Joan truly existed, why was her story deliberately erased? What other historical figures were silenced for not fitting the norms of the time? These questions resonate in a moment when the world is striving to recognize and value marginalized narratives. On the other hand, Pope Joan is also used as an example of how stories can be manipulated to serve political or ideological agendas. For some critics, the legend is an invention created to criticize the papacy or reinforce the exclusion of women. In this sense, it reminds us of the power of narratives and the need to question their origins and intentions. Furthermore, Joan's story highlights the contradictions of the Catholic Church in relation to women. While the Church celebrates female figures as saints and martyrs, it continues to exclude women from positions of leadership. The legend of Joan serves as a mirror to this contradiction, challenging the Church to reconsider its role in promoting gender equality. Finally, the story of Pope Joan inspires debates about the role of faith and tradition in constructing cultural identity. Regardless of its truth, it continues to captivate the imagination and challenge the boundaries between history, myth, and symbolism. The legend of Pope Joan transcends a simple medieval story, leaving deep marks on Western culture. It has become a symbol of questioning the structure of the Catholic Church and the role of women in society. Even without definitive historical proof, the narrative echoes through the centuries, shaping debates and inspiring artistic and intellectual manifestations. Joan's story has served as a theme for countless literary works, plays, and films exploring different interpretations. A notable example is the novel Pope Joan by Donna Woolfolk Cross, which details the life of the supposed female pope. Adapted into a movie, this narrative also fuels documentaries and artistic works that keep the myth alive, exploring it both from a conspiratorial and cultural perspective. For the feminist movement, Joan is seen as a symbol of the fight against gender oppression and the barriers imposed on women. According to the legend, her disguise as a man to attain a position of power highlights the systemic inequality that has pervaded various eras. This symbolism inspires discussions on the role of women in the modern church, where the clergy is still exclusively male. The persistence of the legend causes discomfort for the Catholic Church, which officially classifies it as a myth. However, the simple fact that its existence is widely discussed fuels criticisms and conspiracy theories, raising questions about transparency and the historical narratives controlled by the institution. The fascination with Joan also reflects the resilience of narratives that challenge norms and offer new perspectives. Even discredited by historians, her story continues to intrigue, raising the question of why some legends survive the test of time while others are forgotten. Thus, the legend of Pope Joan remains alive, not as a proven historical event, but as an eternal symbol of resistance, transgression, and mystery. Throughout the centuries, the legend of Pope Joan has remained shrouded in mystery, provoking debates and challenging the traditional narratives of the Church. Whether true or not, her story transcends time, raising profound questions about power, gender, and the structures that shape our society. And now, the question remains, are we facing a truth carefully buried or a legend meticulously crafted? While the Vatican keeps its secrets, it is up to us to continue investigating and questioning. After all, it is in the act of questioning that we find the true essence of the pursuit of knowledge. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysteries of the Church, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more intriguing stories like this, and click on the suggested video on the screen to continue exploring the deepest secrets of Catholicism. Until the next revelation.